Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science.
There were days where we thought we wouldn't make it out, but we stuck it out. Today's our day.
You've come to the right place.
Today's our day.
Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
Do you ever wonder if you married the right person? Many people do when they realize their relationship isn't working quite the way they planned. The focus shifts to what your partner is or is not doing to make the marriage work. But what if that is the wrong place to look? What if the real answers to improving your relationship are in your past, not what's happening today? Well, award-winning memorist, poet, and speaker Dr. Diana Rabb is here to talk about her new book, Hummingbird, Messages from My Ancestors, and how transformational psychology can improve your life and relationships. So Dr. Rabb, Diana, thanks for coming back on the show and talking about your new book, which is I'm really excited to hear about.
Oh, thank you for having me, Leslie. It's my honor.
So let's just jump in here. So how you talk in your book about self-reflection. And so how does developing a practice of self-reflection help with relationships?
Well, that's a really great question. I would start by saying that self-reflection and self-awareness is very important to any relationship because the better you know yourself, the better that you can know the other person, and therefore the better you can communicate and get your feelings across. You know, if we're more self-aware, we tend to understand other people better as well. And of course, I always advocate journaling for that. You know, that's my life passion.
So what gets in the way? I mean, this is an interesting question because what gets in the way of self-reflection? I mean, a lot of times when I work with my clients and maybe suggest journaling or meditating or doing some of these things, I always get, well, there's no time. I'm going, oh, well, okay. Yeah. And I think that that's almost a knee-jerk defense response. So what makes this practice or just the concept of self-reflection, self-analysis, such a challenge for so many of us?
Yes, it is a challenge, and you're right. It's all just excuses. I'm a big believer in rituals, and I think a lot of people over the years have lost their rituals for various reasons. And so I think if we just make it a ritual to meditate and to journal, whatever brings you solace, you get up in the morning, whatever that looks like for you. You maybe look at your messages or maybe not. You brush your teeth, you get your coffee. Well, if you can just fit in, you only need like 10 or 15 minutes or maybe 20 to meditate or journal. And so it's just a matter of setting the routine, setting the rituals. And then once you start doing it on a regular basis, you start feeling the effects, and that is encouraging. That's encouraging for us to continue.
So if somebody, because it's, I've done this myself. I'm a off again, on again journalist. I don't do it all the time, and a lot of times it's because I will admit I haven't set it up as part of my routine, as part of what I do. And I really do think that that's really important to set aside time. But there's also kind of this thing of, what if I don't want to know? I mean, this is, it's so much easier to look at other people, right? I mean, this is the thing when I work with my clients. I tell people, couples work isn't couples work, it's simultaneous individual work. But if we've got this built-in scapegoat, if we can look at the other person and point, it's like, well, you're doing this wrong, and you're doing that wrong, and you're doing this other thing wrong. It's kind of, I let myself off the hook. But what makes it so difficult for us to really dig into what's important to us, what motivates us, what gets in the way of that?
Well, I think you'll agree that a lot of it is fear. A lot of people just don't want to get down and dirty into their psyche to see, they might be depressed, or they might feel anxiety, they might feel whatever they're feeling in a relationship. And it takes work. I mean, I've been a seeker my whole life, and whatever it took to feel better, I would do. You know, there's a history of depression in my family, and I've been terrified of depression, and so I've done everything I could to fend it off. Of course, I've had so many, you know, diversions and challenges along the way that I had to find tools to navigate, you know, help me navigate. So I think it's also, again, about, you know, just setting the rules for yourself. And it's much easier, of course, if you do have a partner, whether it's a spouse or someone that you live with. It's always easier if you do it together, you know. That's the other thing I suggest sometimes to people that have trouble meditating is, you know, go to the nearest yoga center near you and, you know, do group meditation, because there's something about the group that is very inspiring. Even writing in a group, and I do my workshops, people say they do some of their best writing when they're in a group. Just energetically, it just is more powerful.
Yeah, because I think that it can be a little bit of a struggle, and I think this is kind of where you're going after in your new book, because you're talking about messages from my ancestors. So how can connecting with our ancestors help with this process of self-reflection? And how does one even connect with their ancestors to begin with?
Right, exactly. Well, I think, you know, you have to read the book, of course, Messages from My Ancestors, where it's, you know, at the end of each, I mean, it's basically my story. It's basically a memoir. But at the end of each chapter, I do have 5 questions and there are 13 chapters for people to answer, to get in touch with themselves, to get in touch with their ancestors. And it's really about, you know, just taking time for self-discovery and self-care. You know, sometimes we do, especially if you're healers or helpers for other people, we spend more time helping others than we do ourselves. And so my grandmother visited me. You know, the story started in the pandemic, where we were all, you know, boxed into our homes, and I have a little writing studio, and excuse me, there was a hummingbird that kept coming to visit, and I realized, because hummingbirds are connected with the heavens, and they do bring messages from the departed, you know, according to Native American philosophies, and my own also. And so I realized it was her coming to, you know, give me messages. And so I think and how to do it is just being alert, alert for signs, watching what comes in front of you, watch for flickering lights. Those could be messages. You know, watch for words that keep popping up in your mind, anything that might connect you. And when I talk about ancestors, actually, Leslie, I'm not only talking about relatives. I'm talking about people that, you know, have influenced your life, whether they're mentors. And it can also be places that have inspired you.
Well, and it's really interesting because almost all of the men that I have been attached to have been very science-based, you know, very, you know, my husband's a scientist, my dad was an engineer, my son is an engineer, my son-in-law is in the sciences, and, you know, so you know, when we talk about signs and ancestors and feelings, there can be a lot of that's unscientific, that's not really happening. How do we get past that cognitive block that, you know, that shuts us down from this type of energy, I think, that you're talking about, even just talking about the energy in your workshops when people are writing?
Right. You know, well, my husband's an engineer too, so I totally get where you're coming from. But sadly, none of my kids are in the engineering or scientific world. They're all in that creative world, which, of course, is heartbreaking for him.
Right.
But yeah, you know, I think there can be a connection between, you know, I mean, scientists talk about UFOs, right? So that's otherworldly. That's different energy. So I think there can be some kind of connection. Again, it's all about tuning in and paying attention. You know, I think people are often so busy they don't have a chance to look for the signs or, you know, that are coming their way.
Right. I mean, and it's, and it's interesting because, in a way, when we fall in love, that's energetic. Yes, there's hormonal stuff involved with that, but that feeling that we have, and it's interesting. My daughter, a while ago, she was having a medical procedure, and I said to her husband, I said, "What was happening at 8:00 in the morning?" And he goes, "Why?" I said, "Because I felt her, and she was really upset. I mean, I wasn't anywhere around her, but it was just like something happened." And I had to call him. And he goes, "Yeah, she was just getting ready to go into this procedure, and she was really scared." And it was like, dang.
Wow, how perceptive of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I was doing something completely different, and it was like, oh, something's going on. But that's not a normal thing that I do. But it was like, it was so powerful that it was like I had to call him. And it was like, "Is she okay?" I mean, literally is what I said to him, is like, "Is she okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, she was just really nervous." I went, "Okay." But trying to connect into this, and then again getting into this self-reflection, because we don't understand that there are things that are passed through the generations, beliefs, behaviors, trauma. We're discovering all of these things, and it really matters to what we're doing now and how we're in relationship, that I think gets discounted in a very unhelpful way. Or am I right about that?
Yeah, no, you're totally right on. I mean, I think, there are people who say we are our childhoods, which I also believe, but there is a lot carried in our, in our genetic pool. And so, I think it was Helen Epstein who wrote a book on children of Holocaust survivors and how, the psychological issues that they have. Because I am a child of a Holocaust survivor, and I know that anxiety was, a part of certain parts of my life. And I do believe we carry everything in our souls. My grandmother was orphaned in World War I, and I have a fear of abandonment. I mean, and that's not, nothing ever happened to me other than her passing where I would feel abandoned. So where did that come from? I mean, it must have come from something that's living inside me and that was passed down the generations.
Yeah, and it's, and people like to dismiss this as all being woo-woo kind of stuff, but I'm going to say that Albert Einstein, scientist extraordinaire, said everything is energy.
Right.
And so, so sometimes I'm having this conversation with my husband going, honey, Einstein said everything is energy. And he's just like, okay, stop this, But but to go there, we actually have to be willing, I think, to experience some unpleasant. I think this is why a lot of people don't do self-reflection, is because, I don't want to look at the stuff that is a little bit painful. But that's actually part of our growth, and actually, I think our ability to be in good relationships with people. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, fear is definitely a part of it. If I sit quietly by myself, what am I gonna learn that I don't want to know?
Right. I mean, and now it's so hard because there's so many distractions. It's like, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm going to pick up my phone and go through social media or play a game or do something that keeps me out of my own head or heart, as the case may be. And so we just have to go through this. So this is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm having an interesting and important conversation with this is hard for me to say, memoirist, there you go, speaker and transformational psychologist, Dr. Diana Rabb, about improving your life and relationships by connecting with your past. And understanding your legacy can have a profound impact on your current situation. Many beliefs and behaviors are passed down through the generations, and your personal history, as well as that of your ancestors, is influencing your actions in the here and now. Identifying them and addressing them in a productive way can greatly improve your marriage. And if you would like some help with this, I invite you to get in touch with me and schedule your free, no obligation 5-star relationship call. You can reach me by email at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. Or you can give me a call at area code 919-924-0463. Again, that's 919-924-0463. And now I want to get back to this conversation about getting self-reflection and contacting with our ancestors. And I'm going to kind of go off a little bit on this because you state that there are 5 key pillars to a successful marriage. And I was wondering if you could briefly describe them and share how a practice of self-reflection can support these pillars.
Sure. Well, I've been married for, now I'm a writer, not a mathematician here, so it takes me a minute. 47 years and been with my husband for 52. So not that I'm
child bride, were you? Yes.
What's that?
Child bride, you were.
Not that I'm an expert, but I think life does teach us a lot of challenges, and no marriage is perfect. There is always challenges, but if there's a basis of love, then I think we can get through a lot. We've been through cancer diagnoses, daughters with addiction problems, a lot of relatives passing. I'm turning 70 this year, so I've seen a lot of things go on. But I think basically it's the foundation of love, which is critical. That was critical. I have 3 kids, 6 grandchildren, but the 5 pillars, and I've been asked a couple of times to announce these at weddings, the 5 pillars where I think of a good marriage are good communication, which includes listening and talking. It's not just about talking and telling the other person what you are feeling, but listening to what they have to say. And listening is different than hearing, as most therapists know. The second thing I would say is fostering love and passion. Make sure you have regular dates, go out, whether it's going to music, whether it's going to shows and going to dinners, and just, romancing. Romancing is really important, and it's really hard as we get older and we've been with the same partner. I mean, there's a lot of repetition. Obviously, we've seen it all, but trying to bring some variety into the relationship. The third thing I would say is helping one another attain their dreams. Sometimes one person, my husband has a desire to be wanderlust and travel the world and do scuba diving here and taking sailboats in, very remote places, and that's something that I have no interest in. I just going to a spa or staying home and writing, and so I encourage him to follow his passions, maybe find someone to go with, but also, doing it himself. So just encouraging those passions, and he's always encouraged my writing. My new book here, Hummingbird Messages to My Ancestors. I'm doing my first reading locally here in Santa Barbara tomorrow, and he's gone out and bought all the chocolates and treats.
Oh, how sweet!
And so he's trying to get more involved, especially now that he's retired. It was hard when he was running the business. So number 4, I would say, was looking into one another's eyes, and I just think this is important because sometimes we just, go about our day and we forget to look at the eyes of those we love and remember how, what brought us together. What was it? What was that spark? If the spark is gone, let's try to bring some of it back. And the last thing that, I think we've been working on lately is a sense of playfulness and humor. I think as life moves on and serious things happen, it's really hard. I have a brother-in-law that's kind of on his last days, and it's hard to have a sense of humor when loved ones are suffering or you're going through your own challenges. But, there's always a little bit of room and also playfulness, which is hard. It's hard as you get older. But you have to, again, make it a ritual, make it a practice, and work. It's work. No one said life was easy.
I know. I wish it were. But yeah. So I want to go back to, I think it was the looking into each other's eyes. That is a very scary and vulnerable thing to do. And I think it's why we don't do it. There's the adage that the eyes are the windows to the soul. It's like, I don't want you looking in there. How, and I would suppose that maybe even in this as a self-reflection exercise, looking into our own eyes.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, how is there a way to make that less scary other than just doing it, because that to me is, out of all of the ones, that's really the scariest for me, is looking directly into somebody's eyes.
Yes, it's true, because time stands still, but it also can, flip you back into the past. You see all the stories when you look in someone's eyes. You see the joy and you see the pains, and sometimes, it's hard. It's definitely hard. Yeah, and you're right. I don't want you to look at me. I don't want you to know what I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, and it's, because I can't remember who, it may have been David Schnarch, but he was talking about, when you're making love to your partner, that looking into each other's eyes is one of the most connecting and yet vulnerable things that we can do in that very vulnerable moment that we're in anyway. And and it's one of the things that what I'm getting from this is that the more open that we can be. But again, this goes along, all your 5 pillars go along with each other about it's going to be it's going to be easier for me to look into somebody's eyes when I feel loved and supported by them than if I don't. And right. This is one of those things where we're disconnecting from people. Right. I worry a little bit about the next generation because they don't talk, they text. It's like
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other thing. And I'm wondering if maybe that's why so many young people are struggling. Obviously we've gone through some tough times, but without having these tools or these skills to be able to connect with other people, I would think, and maybe this is kind of the premise of the book about connecting with our ancestors as well, that when we feel connected, we're healthier. We're healthier and happier.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. But it's also that I just feel some days that there's no wisdom around me.
Right.
I hate to say that, but I just feel, the world is lost in certain areas. And so I feel like the ancestors, my sense is, which is why I've been at this chapter of my life reaching for the ancestors, is I think they have a wisdom that I don't feel a lot from people that I run into during the course of the day. And maybe it's because they've been through so much, and they just seem to hold a lot more wisdom. They have a perspective on life. That's what I'm yearning for that.
Right.
Which is why I went in that direction.
So we talked a little bit about this before the break when you were talking about the writing prompts that you included in the book. And so, why did you include them, and what's the best way that someone can make use of them?
Well, that's an interesting question because I have a history of being a writing teacher and also a nursing, healing. All my professions have been, sort of in the healing realm. I always feel like I want to help people on their journey. And so initially, my first draft did not have writing prompts, but my publisher, who does a lot of self-help books, thought I should include them, and I was really not too happy about that because I just wanted to do the memoir.
Right.
But once I included them, it's so interesting how many people have remarked and how wonderful that is. And they really enjoy that because, like, one of the questions you asked me earlier on, Leslie, is how do I do this? Well, the prompts will help people, examining what it is about yourself that you love, for example, and where do you think you got that from? And also, what legacy do you want to leave behind for the next generation? So a lot of reflection. Again, the prompts just help us reflect and go deeper for those that are, just trying to figure out how to do it. And there doesn't have to be writing prompts. They can also be, discussion prompts in various sessions.
Right, and because that to me would be a great way to connect with your partner, your child, a friend. When you would ask that question. I mean, I can't remember what program I was taking, but one of the assignments was to ask 5 people who knew me pretty well, what they thought what they liked about me or whatever. So it's very interesting when you're able to have that conversation and share that with other people, because that's not always what we say to people. We don't always tell people what we like about them, or sometimes even what annoys us. Yeah. But I do like this idea of stopping and thinking, where did this come from? Because it could have been, like you said, it could have been a family member, or it could have been a mentor. And I would imagine that in reading the book and reading your stories, that actually also can focus people in a different way to their own stories.
Yes, exactly. And I think it will inspire them. And something in my story might spark a memory in their story which they want to write about, and that was my exact intention.
Yeah, I mean, and when I've talked with people about journaling, because one of the things that I recommend is free writing, where you kind of have a prompt, and then you just write without thinking, correcting grammar, spelling. You just write. And if you've written for 10, 15 minutes, you're past the superficial. You're into, you're into that deeper stuff. And that's the thing about time, because when we deal with ourselves or with other people, it's in very short little, if it's 5 minutes, that's a long time. It's usually closer to 1 minute. We're having these, what I call informational exchange conversations, not person-to-person conversations. But if you're still talking to somebody after 20 minutes, you've gone past the superficial and you're getting into what it means. And this is where we have the door open to, ourselves and to other people. And again, it's a little scary. So,
Yeah.
Because I think it takes a lot of courage to do self-reflection, or to be open to your partner, and you're talking about with you and your husband about that he wants to do all these things that don't necessarily land with you, but you encourage him to do it with other people without feeling, it sounds like, without feeling threatened. But there's so much self-protection, and I am assuming that self-reflection can help with that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't believe there's any harm in self-reflection. I think it was James Pennebaker, who was one of the pioneers in writing for healing. He said, you write and you write and you write, but when it starts to hurt, you should stop and just take a break and do something else, and maybe come back to it, because it should feel better when you write about your life, when you reflect on things that you've lived through.
And it allows us, I think, to look at it from a different perspective. So I really love the focus on what's coming from the, maybe, I guess it's the metaphysical world, the stuff that we can't necessarily put our hands around, but being able to be open to, because sometimes we can say it's an ancestor or somebody who's bringing that to us, or it could just be, wow, this experience has made me think of this other thing. Sure. So it's we can, for those of my listeners who aren't, who dismiss woo-woo, that if you can't prove it in an experiment, it doesn't exist.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't. What I'm hearing is that isn't a reason not to participate in this self-reflection, because I think that's where most of our answers are. So Diana, thanks so much for coming on and sharing about this. Can you tell people where they can get the book and learn more about you?
So the book was really, well, I guess by the time this is broadcast, it was released on January 15th, and it's available. It's called Hummingbird, Messages from My Ancestors, and my name is Diana Raab, R-A-A-B, and my website is dianaraab.com, DIANARAAB.com, and the book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Bookshop, or you can go into your local bookstore and request it. Anybody can order it. And I hope you enjoy the read. This is my 14th book, so it's pretty exciting.
Wow, I've done 2, and I don't think I've got another one in me.
You never know until you know it.
Right.
I don't think I did either.
Yeah. So the lens you view the world through has been formed by both your personal experience and the multi-generational legacy of your family. The ability to alter your current circumstances or behavior, believe it or not, is actually rooted in the past. If you do not understand it, it can make the process much more difficult. So what would help you take on this transformational journey? Hopefully buying Diana's book will be the first step, but hopefully you'll continue to do this, and hopefully one of the things you'll do is to continue listening to this show. And until next week, stay loving.